Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm greetings from the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE Dialogues team at the Centre for Creative Arts here at UKZN. We are delighted to welcome you this afternoon for our official launch of our beautiful archive from this year's dialogues. And to start off with, just to kind of welcome everybody, but to particularly welcome the amazing steering committee that I've been working with for the last 4 years, who have been feeding in and supporting, nurturing, holding, guiding these amazing dialogues. So just to welcome Professor Yvette Hutchison from the University of Warwick, David April from the University of Pretoria, Claire Craighead from the Durban University of Technology, Tobile Mapanga from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Professor Sarah Lee Castellan from the University of East London, and of course Wesley Maheri, our technical genius and guru, who is helping to run the program. And just to kick us off, a short message from the director of the Centre for Creative Arts, Dr. Ishmael Mohammed.
On behalf of the Centre for Creative Arts at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, I extend our warmest welcome to all of you this evening. I regret that due to hospitalization, I cannot be with you today. I also bring you greetings from the Dean of the School of Arts, Professor Nobuhle Hlongwa, who is away on conference. The Jomba Festival is one of 5 festival properties that is proudly presented by the Centre for Creative Arts. We are incredibly proud of how Jomba plays a pioneering and a leadership role in shaping the future of contemporary dance in South Africa. We salute Jomba and its community of participants for their courage to break down prejudicial boundaries and to be an inclusive and safe space for critical engagement. We extend our appreciation to Warwick University Jomba this year that challenged us and inspired us about how we engage and broaden access to the festival. This year's Jomba Festival was also presented against a background of a new era in South African politics. The festival took place against a backdrop of our country's courageous leadership at the International Court of Justice and our nation's passionate commitment to solidarity against genocide. There can't be a more urgent time in our lives when the voices of artists needs to resonate more loudly to redefine what it means to be human. Since inception, the Jomba Festival, under the leadership of Dr. Leanne Lutz, an amazingly hardworking team, have been bold, courageous, challenging, and inspiring. Each year, the Jomba Festival has drawn together dancers, choreographers, other creatives, and audiences to offer us the best of local, national, and international dance and dance dialogue. That this archive is being curated and conserved for future generations makes absolute sense. I extend our most sincere gratitude to the community of contemporary dance who see Jomba as a place that can be called home. Best wishes and thank you.
Thank you so much, Ishmael, for those lovely warm words. So I've just realized that I left out probably the most important person this year in our steering committee welcome, and that was, of course, Dr. Mbongeni Mchali, and I apologize for leaving you off the list, but in a way, I suppose it's sort of fortuitous because Mbongeni this year was our keynote speaker and framed our Jomba MASIHAMBISANE dialogues, and so offered the most amazing provocation, and I'm going to ask him in a moment to speak to that. But what I would like to do is just take a moment to perhaps have a little bit of a reminisce. This was, in fact, our 4th year of running the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE dialogues, which means that we've got 4 years of an extraordinary archive, and I'm hoping that there will be a continued use of the archive. And one of the things that we set out to do when we started the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE dialogues in 2021, sort of just coming out of the COVID era, was to find a space to get researchers, academics, practitioners, artists to have a way of kind of interfacing and talking, a way of theorizing our work, but also very, very specifically for our discipline as dancers and dance makers, to really understand the idea of practice as research. And so one of the things that we continue to push and promote in the dialogues is, of course, scholarly papers, and the wonderful archive will have all of those papers, but also very carefully curated engagement with artists and practitioners. And the idea that we spend a lot of the dialogues in communication and in dialogue with artists who are doing seminal work in various spaces, particularly on the African continent, but also beyond that, in a way of really pushing the idea of really hearing artists' voices as a form of archiving knowledge. And so one of the things that I feel particularly proud about what we've done over the last 4 years is generate an extraordinary resource of interviews and dialogues with really seminal artists, people of the likes like Vincent Mansui, Robin Orlin, David April, Gregory McBoma. There's been a huge discourse of really significant interviews, and I hope that those become archival research platforms, just for just listening to these artists speak, but also for onward research and onward discussion around the idea of our dance practice as research and looking at artists as researchers. So just in terms of our first dialogue, we started, amidst the COVID pandemic, looking at the choreographed politics of intimacies, and generated a lot of discussion around how COVID had shifted the digital and the embodied space for artists. The second year, we looked in 2022 at the idea of dancing archives, and particularly pertinent for our own continent, the idea of the body as archive, and how do we start to look at bodies that have held archives and histories and memory, particularly in contexts of colonization, decolonial politics, post-colonial politics. Our third iteration in 2023, we dived into looking at the really difficult issue of integrated dance practices, and we called it moving centers, and the idea of what does it mean to include and exclude? How do we embrace difference in terms of disability? What is the othering that is inherent in our discipline, and how do we as practitioners begin to challenge this notion of inclusivity? And then in 2024, this year, we took, again, a very controversial topic, and we looked at the idea of the return to the drum, provocations in contemporary dances, engagement with tradition, culture, hybridity, and contested identities. And the idea of really looking at how we engage scholarship, pedagogy, practice into negotiating intersections, and intersections are both easy and uneasy, around culture, tradition, history, memory, and contemporary dance making and performance of scholarship. We also, and thanks to Bongeni, put a little brackets, parentheses around so it was return, and I know he's going to talk a little bit about that, and as he did provoke in his most amazing keynote address. So we hope that during the dialogues we provoked discussion on contemporary dance makers whose dance work really intersects with negotiated ideas of culture and tradition. And we also, one of the things that we all started to understand, that notions of culture and tradition are never, never easy. And so with that very short introduction, I'm going to ask Mongeni to speak to his remarkable keynote paper, which is now available in the archives. And also we've had the great privilege of being able to translate it into isiZulu. So it's also there in multiple formats for engaging. So Mbongeni, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leanne. And I think I'd be remiss if I began without thanking you for your stewardship of both Jomba and this committee. These are the fruits of your labor as much as they are the multiple people who are actually present for the dialogue. So thank you again for your leadership. On returning to the drum, a coda. In my keynote provocation for the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE Dialogues, titled On Returning to the Drum, as Leanne has already said, I delved into the drum as a rich symbol and concept through which to explore the complexities of post-colonial identity and modernity within contemporary dance. My address unfolded in 3 parts or movements, each revealing a deeper understanding of the drum as more than just an instrument, and framing it instead as a vehicle for historical memory, cultural identity, and practices of social change. The first movement dealt with the historical and cultural foundations of the drum as an instrument and as a concept. Here, I explored the origins of the drum and its interwoven history with dance across cultures and time periods, highlighting its universal role in human expression. From ancient rituals to cultural ceremonies, the drum and dance have evolved together, I showed, bearing witness to humanity's shared impulse for rhythm and movement. Drums served not merely as musical tools, but as vital components in rituals, healing, and spiritual practices, connecting communities and embodying social bonds. African, Native American, Indian, and Middle Eastern traditions demonstrate this connection vividly, where drums guide and unify communal dance, shaping stories, beliefs, and identities. I further noted that as music genres like jazz, rock, and hip hop emerged in the 20th century, drums inspired new dance forms that remain culturally significant today. Thus, the drum symbolizes a collective rhythm that binds humanity across diverse histories, serving as a reminder of our past and an invitation to reflect on our evolving relationship to those histories. The second movement dealt with the concept of the drum as a philosophical and political concept. And in this movement, I conceptualized the drum as a tool for understanding post-colonial politics and cultural identity, especially within dance. Drumming not only reflects existential presence and connection to community, but also carries deep meanings tied to our experience of the movement of time, to transformation and continuity. I accordingly outlined 6 key ideas that the drum represents in this particular context: that it represents primal connection, that it marks time, existential presence, communal unity, transformation as an expression of ritual practices, and of course, cultural memory. Considered together, these elements revealed the drum's rhetorical function as an embodiment of culture, knowledge, and historical consciousness in contemporary discourses. I argued that the drum's ability to evoke shared ancestry and identity has a potent appeal for post-colonial societies which strive to reconnect with traditions disrupted by colonialism. However, I also question the complexities of returning to the drum in a post-colonial context. Rather than a simple embrace of tradition, returning to the drum challenges dancers and dance makers to consider how to engage with the drum and the cultural values it represents in ways that resist essentialism. I critiqued both a nostalgic view of the drum, which risks reducing it to a symbol of static, romanticized tradition, and a wholesale rejection of it, which might represent a surrender to colonial distortions of cultural heritage. Instead, what I called for was a return, and to repeat what Leanne pointed out, that it's both a turn and a return that allows for nuance and adaptability, engaging the drum as both a historical and future-facing symbol. The third movement then focused on the idea of dancing with the drum. That is, the drum as a symbol for dialogue and subversion in contemporary contexts. In the third movement of the address, I introduced a powerful metaphor for understanding the drum's role in modern dance and its potential to act as a disruption. I recounted a performance that I witnessed in Havana. I described a dancer facing the drummer rather than the audience, creating a dialogue where the drum and dancer interacted dynamically, responding to each other in an almost conversational exchange. For me, this shift in the dancers' and drummers' respective bodily orientation towards one another signifies an essential shift in critical perspective. That is, the dancer is not moving to the drum's rhythm, but accepts the invitation to dance with it, embodying a fluid and open relationship that challenges the boundaries of both tradition and modernity. This dialogical engagement reflects for me a broader imperative for dancers and dance makers to approach identity and heritage in an active, present-centered way, not bound by the dictates of the past. I propose that this relationship to the drum can serve as a liberating practice in post-colonial settings where marginalized individuals can potentially redefine what it means to return to the drum on their own terms and challenge the notion of the drum in and of itself. By choosing to dance with rather than simply to the drum, dancers could thereby reclaim identity and create new forms of cultural expression that blend historical roots with contemporary realities. To conclude, my provocation was to position the drum as a symbol that invites reflection on both the past and the future, embodying the potential to imagine new modes of belonging and solidarity within the post-colony. I argued that returning to the drum need not be an act of submission to a singular vision of heritage. Rather, it can be an act of creative dialogue that generates fresh possibilities for imagining selfhood and cultural identity and our investments in those. This concept was my offering to the framing of the 2024 Jomba MASIHAMBISANE Dialogues, inspiring participants to consider the drum's call as an invitation to engage actively with tradition and to envisage radical, inclusive futures through the dynamic medium of dance. And I'm sure that as you engage with the materials in this delicious archive that has been constructed together and that we're here to launch today, you'll find expressions of all of these themes in the multiple different papers and really rich conversations that happened over the course of the dialogues. And I'm sure that my colleagues will also in their little discussions reflect on those further. But again, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I'm super excited to see, what we do with this material and how it helps drive further dialogues in future, whether collectively or in our own individual practice as scholars, as practitioners, and as makers of dance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mbongeni, for the truly beautiful paper that still resonates with me and the reminder of the provocations. And one of the things that really struck me was the way in which you manage as both a scholar and an artist to challenge what I think you originally called a kind of subjunctive nostalgia around the past. And so this idea of thinking about the drum as something about our future imperatives as well, I found that deeply provoking and really thank you for that. So thank you. I'm going to ask our beautiful steering committee to just also offer their reflections of the dialogues, just say either to reflect on what Mbongeni has provoked, or to reflect also a little bit on their experiences of this year's dialogues. And I'm going to start first with Professor Yvette Hutchison from Warwick University.
Thank you, Leanne, and thank you, Mbongeni. It's been lovely to think back after a few months and really reflect on the thoughts that you provoked and how they've continued to resonate with us. And particularly, I've thought about the radical critical work you suggest the drum can do as it teaches us to listen to rhythm differently and allow us to dance as much to as with the drum. And this idea of dancing with opened up the colloquium, I think, both conceptually and communally, because it asked us to think beyond past binaries and how we can continue to flow and use rhythm and be in time and of the moment. So this requires us to step into a rhythm, even if that rhythm is not our own. So this notion of returning suggests both continuity and a break with the past, which usefully breaks monolithic static engagements with the past, as you suggested, to allow us to conceptualize different futures, both for dance practice and for ourselves communally, and with very different identities and positionalities and perspectives historically on the drum and dance in our own bodies. I found the conversations with the different artists that we heard and saw, and how dancers and choreographers have pioneered these breaks and turns, as being very important for me to actually see how they've broken patterns, but also pioneered some of the things that we're conceptualizing now. I was personally very engaged with various cultural perspectives on returning, particularly those from Brazilian dancer practitioners Lara Barzan and Alexandra Gonçalves Dias, who considered anthropophagy or cultural cannibalism as a modality that enables creation through otherness, as it challenges notions of static authenticity and invites dancers to incorporate the enemy or the other's perspective into their own identities in and through their own bodies. This enables us to be affected by others and for dancers to respond to the human, the non-human, and social taboos in ways that enable us to positively imagine coexistence amidst antagonisms. And I think in the world we're living in today, that's absolutely crucial. And I was particularly moved by the conversation between Lutz Vincent Montessori and Muketsi Kuna on the convergences and divergences of dance, spirituality, and ritual. It's amazing to have a space in which these deeply embodied experiences can be explored alongside the differences between dance and ritual and the dangers of conflating them in superficial ways. And this is something that I'm really looking forward to going back and reviewing in the archive. I thought that conversation was really deep and important, and maybe one that we don't generally have. I've returned to the notion of the drum as transpolitical and asked, what does this mean? And I don't think it means above or beyond the political, but something that bridges borders and allows us to cross and recross these borders and connect with ourselves and with others. So once again, I want to thank Jomba MASIHAMBISANE for the opportunity to enable us to engage deeply with questions, with work, and with forms that continue to shape and reshape our thinking, especially around inclusiveness. That term is used often and loosely. What does that mean? Tradition, and how we engage with these things in the past, how we rethinking them in the present, and hopefully transforming them in the future. So I thank you for the time to reflect on this, and I'm really looking forward to digging back into this archive.
Thank you so much, Yvette, for your beautiful and considered words, and again, also for your input and your contribution to making the MASIHAMBISANE dialogues what they are. I'm going to turn now to David April, a dear friend and colleague from the University of Pretoria, to offer us his reflections.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I am just going to give an overall overview of my impressions over the past 4 years. So I'm not necessarily going to comment on a particular paper or papers or discussions. The one thing that I take, especially as a takeaway, is the fact that for many, many years, I've been personally, it's going to sound strange, but I'm going to say it anyway, resistant to how we approach, how we talk about dance, how we talk about art making, how we talk about the practice of the arts. And for me, I've always found it difficult that it's always up there. It's always about how clever people sound, how the use of words in expressing something very, very basic. And then one of the reasons that I decided that I was going to be part of Jomba Colloquium was the fact that for the first time in the longest time, there was the inclusion of artists who were able to express themselves. Now, as we know, as artists, we find it difficult to use words. Now, suddenly, here's an opportunity where we talk about the reason we create art and why we do that, how we do it. And then suddenly there is now access to information to then say that, okay, now I'm going to delve deeper into my own practice so that other people are able to interrogate, understand, and then appreciate exactly what it is that we say, what is the essence of the arts. So for me, that moment where there was an opportunity for artists to engage meaningfully with academics, with other artists, for me, that's a major, major highlight, because we still find it difficult to talk about what we do, why we create. And for the first time in a long time, now we've got this incredible archive which stretches across in terms of themes. Yes, it's only been 4 years, but then if you had to go back, all of us, if we had to go back to all of them, you'll see that there's all these sub-themes that can be researched in itself. So for me, yes, I would like to go back and then see, okay, what is it that we did year 1 up till this point? Because that is a major resource that's going to outlive us. And then I boldly say that because it's not often that people talk about the art of art making and also the essence. And then also another takeaway for me was the fact that there was a lot of unlearning to do from my side personally, that we often have these perceptions, we often have these stereotypes about a lot of things within the realms, obviously, of art making and all of that. And then suddenly you hear how other people are thinking differently about this is what we are here for. And this is why we do it. So for me, especially it was last year where it was a lot of unlearning that there needs to be a paradigm shift in terms of the way that I think about art making, the way that I engage with other artists, and then also the way that I engage with art in its various forms. Because this hasn't been only about dance, it's been about dance, visual arts, everything that you can think of. So for me, those are the two major takeaways that, like, a lot of learning, unlearning, and then also the fact that this theme of inclusion, that suddenly now the voiceless, those who create using their bodies, are able to express it and then document it differently. And there is this amazing record, this archive that's going to be absolutely fantastic for future use. And I just want to say thank you to all of you, because with all your deep English, I've learned so much. Sometimes I have to refer to the dictionary next to me just to, unpack some of the things that you're saying. But then really and truly, you've been absolutely fantastic for the past 4 years. It's been an amazing journey just in terms of learning and unlearning. And then I hope that this will continue on and on and on. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you for your community as well, for being a backbone and in this and in many areas of our industry, and for being a tireless voice for us. So thank you so much. I'm going to ask Claire Craighead to speak next. I know Claire's having problems with her camera, but she is with us. So thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Leanne and friends. Yes, apologies, my camera is just not cameraing today. But my reflections are both general and specific. So I'm going to start with the general reflections initially. And much like David, to just echo, looking back at the past 4 years, being invited to be part of this committee, and being able to be, I think, part of something bigger than myself is such a great privilege and a great joy as well. Our lives are busy, right? And every year this comes around and we're all, busy, busy, busy. And then we get this moment to breathe. We get this moment to really be with each other, to engage also, I think, important and interesting and also controversial engagements with each other, and obviously with a growing community of artists, of scholars who join us along for the ride. And I have to say, there aren't a lot of spaces like this. And so to my peers and to all of our friends that we're collecting along the way, I mean, what a great privilege to be able to be part of that. And also, as to echo what David said, that there is an archive that is living. It's not a dead thing. It's a living thing. It's growing. It's being added to, and of course, every time it's interacted with, it becomes more. It becomes more than itself. It keeps giving back. It's that real idea, actually, I think, of community, that it's not one for oneself. It is that real impulse to just keep giving back and giving back and giving back and growing in that. When I look specifically at this year's colloquium, I took pages and pages of notes and kind of reflecting on them to speak briefly today. I've kind of highlighted a few things that stood out for me, and I'm going to kind of just say them as they are. So the one thing that and it came from Mbongeni's keynote, the idea of the drum representing cultural identity, memory, and the idea of discontinuity with ancestral traditions, this idea of the drum is not just an artifact of the past. It is very much present and future, as I think Mbo very profoundly raised. And I think I'm still sitting with that. I don't think that I've stopped thinking about that. I think that's a real future growing thought. It's something that's going to grow and continue to grow for me. The idea also of the drum, not just as an instrument, but a profound symbol of or for humanity, from personal and immediate to the communal and the transcendental. The idea that the drum is culture, it is history, it is an epistemology, a way of knowing through and with, importantly for us in a dance space, our bodies. And I say our bodies because the body, you know, as it's structured or constructed in dance, is a very exclusionary idea. But when we speak about our bodies and how they very much are drums in and of themselves, and kind of the, you know, the thinking around and through that. Also the idea of the drum as a paradigm, and as Mbo very pointedly points out, the drum is a paradigm set against Western imperialism, and the idea of not to question whether we return, but how we return, and importantly, what we return to. And I put my own little note aside that, and it's a quotation, from when I was a second year student at university, and it's stayed with me. But Meredith Tax asks a question. She says, culture is not neutral. Who does it serve? And so when we start to look at these shifting cultural paradigms that are historical, they are present and also future facing, the idea also that culture is living, it's not an artifact of the past, but it is very much connected. So it's almost like chewing gum. It's pulling in all of the directions, and we have a choice, we have agency in terms of how we navigate that. And yeah, and just some of kind of closing thoughts. But the idea of the drum as an, you know, the drum that having agency and an affirmative agency. I'm reminded of the post-human positionalities that understand that the human is not the center, that we are part of these interactive systems and networks. And if we open ourselves to the possibilities and the potentials beyond ourselves, I think that there is so much growth and potential in that. So I'll end with that.
Thank you, Claire, for those really beautiful reflections. And as I know it's your big research area, but to remind us of pushing into the post-human, which is this, of course, profound way of rethinking the concept of binary. So thank you so much, Claire. I'm going to ask Toby Mapanga to offer her reflections.
Thank you, Liz. And I apologize for being a little bit late. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here again as part of the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE Dialogues editorial team, but also part of the Jomba team as a whole. This year's publication for me was an exciting one, as it in many ways dealt with identity and how we return to ourselves. It is also one that seemed to echo across the world as we all try to negotiate identity and who we are in these times, and what memory is, and how we utilize it to negotiate the past, the current, and hopefully the future. It was interesting to see that that there was kind of like a commonality across the world in thinking about these things. The Canadian journal Toba, which is a fairly new journal negotiating histories of the study and practice of live arts curation, was also exploring a similar topic at pretty much the same time. I was very grateful that the managing director of said journal, Davida, was able to join these dialogues to speak about this and the journal, and how she generously, along with the publishing house of Bergen Journals, offered all of our participants free access to the journal for a limited amount of time. This year's dialogues, like previous years, has had quite an international footprint with submissions and presentations this year from the Americas, Africa, Europe, the UK, and Australia. Again, this mix of presentations from different voices and perspectives offered everything from delivered papers to dialogues and sharing a performance work video, which also always makes me happy as it continues to honor our initial mandate that allows for people engaging with dance at different levels to participate in these dialogues. The engagement with this year's topic was also very interesting, and I learned a lot, obviously, but I also learned some things that I'm still figuring out and still figuring how I feel about them. I loved the engagement with the drum from different perspectives of the world and how it linked across so many cultures and its embodiment. Although we provoked a returning, I loved the engagement with the futures that was deployed through current technologies, but also current representations, the futuristicness of practices and collaborations, and the dreaming of us into new spaces. Some of the research was quite unexpected for me, and I know I will be returning to it at a later point in my life, and I think I can process it a little bit better, and perhaps I've grown a little bit more. But this, I feel, is why this growing archive is really, really special and super vital. In a world where access and mobility is becoming more and more at risk, it is amazing to know that we have this open space where people from all walks of dance can engage with it freely, but also that people who have done so so generously by offering their work and allowing us to put it up. I'm proud of what we are offering, and I hope everyone enjoys returning to those 3 magical days where we all convened online to share and participate in thinking, imagining, and processing together. I hope that we will continue to invest and remember that practice is research, artists are researchers, art is research, culture, history, tradition, all speak to contested identities, but also reflect how similar and in unison we are. That the drum is supremely linked to our spirituality and ancestry, and as Mbongeni defined it, is a vehicle for historical memory, identity, and social change. As somebody who's a massive lover of jazz, I love the body as the drum, so that we can dance with and to it, but that it reminds us all, that offers us that the drum is rhythm, that influences us as that the drum's influence on us is music, and that bass line is a persistence and a possibility to continue to fully explore our humanity. Thank you to our team. Thank you to everybody who was there. Thank you to everybody who listened and watched. And I really encourage everybody to go back and explore this archive, because it is an incredible one with incredible voices, and offers a really, really important messenger at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Toby, and also thank you for your absolutely beautiful work that you do in service of these dialogues and of Jomba generally, and for standing with me. I really appreciate that and love you so much for that. I also really honor the amazing conversation you had with Mamela Nyamza, where through your friendship with her, you were able to find a deep vulnerability and knowing with her, and it made it a very profound dialogue. So thank you for that as well. I would like to ask our last member of our committee, Professor Sarah Lee Castellan from the University of East London in the UK. Sarah.
Thank you. I am not going to be as eloquent as these beautiful other people on this call. And I firstly just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity again. Thank you that we all get together. I was thinking when everyone's talking now, I'd taken some notes before and I had a little idea of what I was going to say. But I think one of the things about Jomba MASIHAMBISANE is that it is a dialogue, it is a colloquium. So I'm kind of there's stuff I might say now, which is what I planned. But actually what I was hearing was the fact that our living archive or archives is in itself a drum, and is a thing that returns, so you can return to. Yeah, it can also be centered as an anchor that we use to organize, so as a particular event at a particular time. that it has reverberations and so on. And in a way, that's helpful for me. And the thing that I was going to address, and I'm really thankful now after listening to everybody kind of give their views and their insights. You know, I sit with an uncomfortable like tension and a desire. I'm a white South African, right? Of a particular age, of a particular time. And I know that it was my ancestors who silenced drums, who removed drums, who devalued drums, and so on. We could go historically and look at further ancestors in terms of, you know, there is the Irish drum, there are other drums from Europe, but they themselves were pushed when we think about socioeconomic classes and also around, you know, the push of capitalism as such, you know. So it's I have a complicated relationship there. And I also have a complicated relationship when I'm home with the drum in South Africa and when I'm here in the UK. And the thing that I really, really I felt at the end of the last Jomba MASIHAMBISANE is one, picking up Claire's notion of the body as I drum at the bodies. And if we think about the skin of the drum, but also the drum in itself, I don't want to be simple and say it's polyrhythmic, but it can sometimes be off time and on time and different things. And maybe I'm sitting on the off timing kind of moment on a drum, which in a way is an exciting place to be because it is, you know, that little moment that happens. And to kind of close, what I got from it is that, especially I admire Vincent. I had the opportunity to interview Sylvia Glasser. You know, I got the opportunity, well, I got the feel that I could take up an invitation to come to the drum as a white South African. And that was profound for me. So that's my little moment. That's my little drum beat that's reverberated with me.
Thank you so much, Sarah Lee. And also thank you for your incredible insights and support that you offer to the MASIHAMBISANE dialogues. I know for me, and I'm not going to reflect for too long, but I know for me, there were it was a beautiful colloquium, and I felt deeply challenged on many levels from being, as I always kind of frame myself, an inside-outsider. And I felt a real sense of that being provoked and that being challenged in ways that really spoke about the idea of this body as a drum and our histories and our memories of that. But there were two things that for me really stood out personally. And the one was the great privilege of interviewing Vincent Mansuri and Moketsi Kuna in a discussion around African spiritualities, particularly South African traditional spiritualities and how they relate and intersect with dance. And they're both artists that I know really well. I count them to be not just colleagues, but deep friends as well. But to have had them so openly discuss their own spiritual journeys and to talk about the relationship of the spirit world to the drum and to the body and to what happens when we negotiate ritual and performance on stage felt like a deeply significant conversation that I hope that I would like to listen again to hear their voices, but also that I hope it would be something that we could also encourage students who are working in those kinds of arenas to listen to as well. And the second thing that really challenged me were the two papers from South America that Yvette has mentioned, the papers by Lara and Alexandra, the idea of the cannibal and the idea of consuming, the idea of really consuming the other and getting it just really blew my mind. And I'm still needing to read those papers again and to be provoked by them. But I felt it was really important as scholars of the South to meet with both of those authors and scholars and to engage their ideas that really felt for me new and quite challenging. So I'd like to thank them also for bringing their papers and Yvette for a meeting, allowing us to meet them. So thank you. I'm going to ask Wes now, it's really easy to find the archive. It's not like a big job to find it, but I'm going to ask Wesley, who has very kindly been the person to navigate the setting up of the archives for us, if Wes has a moment just to show us how we find the archive. Wes, are you up to do that?
Hello everyone. For those who have not accessed our online digital archive before, to find the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE Dialogues proceedings, as always for all things Jomba related, go to our website, jomba.ukzn.ac.za. From there, at the top of the page, you can either hover over the MASIHAMBISANE Dialogues tab and click on the issue you wish to view, or click on the tab to open the landing page. Here you can still find previous issues available on the website all the way back to our first colloquium in 2021. Now, you can click on the top button to view the current proceedings outcomes. On this page you can download the full colloquium proceedings in a PDF document, or scroll down to view any of our keynote dialogues and any other archived videos. Next you can also click on the paper headings and see all the papers as separately viewable and downloadable documents, and easy access to their videos, if the papers have videos alongside them. The ever-growing digital archive of Jomba and its MASIHAMBISANE Dialogues remain available free and accessible from the jomba.ukzn.ac.za website. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Wes. We appreciate that. Please go and freely access the archives, the papers, the videos, the discussions. There is some of the papers had small videos, so those are all available. So it's left for me really just we're in good time, and just to say that we are officially launched, ta-da, and that please go and have a look at the archives. We will definitely be having a Jomba MASIHAMBISANE Dialogues in 2025, and we will begin discussions around, the thematics and the provocations. But I would like to also once again express my deepest gratitude to this amazing group of people who have walked with me on this journey and have been, I know that it's said quite loosely, but I mean it in a very profound way, have become artistic and academic family who have been there. I know that outside of the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE Dialogues, all of you have become people that we refer to one another. We are each other's go-to people in many areas of our working lives. And for that, I really say thank you beyond this. I also want to thank the ever-growing community of scholars. I think Toby mentioned that, who are courageously sharing their work and are using this platform to try out, to experiment, to have a chance to speak. And I hope that continues to grow. So on behalf of the Jomba team, to say thank you very much, everyone, for being here and for the delight in sharing knowledge and provoking one another in a spirit of deep caring and love, and to say thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Have a beautiful rest of the day.